Hello, everybody. I'm making a recording today to share some addition I'm making to discounted.cash. And I'm doing this just in case it might be useful to maybe some beginner.net developers or just folks that are interested in the project. The project is a website a little web application that I hope will be educational and help people understand the time value of money. And I have it up here on the right. Discounted.cash is the address. And that comes from the phrase discounted cash flow. So I'll cover the basic idea real quick. The idea is that money that you receive in the future can be valued today. And the simple idea behind that is a dollar that I receive tomorrow is not quite worth a dollar today, but it's worth something. And that difference is a function of what we call the discount rate. And so I'll show you the math for that momentarily, but there's a link here on the site to the Wikipedia page that describes how you discount future money back to the present day. And right now what we have is one page that will do just that, that will evaluate just that equation. Let's say you're going to get $10,000, you're going to get it 10 years from now, and you discount that at a rate of 5% per year. And you basically do 10,000 divided by 1.05 to the power of 10, and you get $6,139. So this is for just doing the calculation one time. In practice, we don't usually use it that way. In practice, what we do is we accumulate all the future cash flows for successive years. So for example, over the next decade, and we add those all up to get the present value of something like a business. So as I said, right now we have one page here that just evaluates this function for one period. So what I want to do is add a page that will evaluate it for 10 years, 10 periods. So like I said, the page is here for you to try, the app discounted.cash. It's an open source project, so you can find the code up on GitHub at github.com/intbasis/discounted.cash. And so let's get started. So I'm using Blazor for this application. So I've got my Blazor documentation here. And for the styles, I'm using Bootstrap 5. So I've got my Bootstrap documentation here. I always have to have that handy. And I've got my solution open in Visual Studio 2022 right now. And so let's have a look at the current project layout. We have an index razor file. And so I'm going to add a new page here. So just right click, add razor component. And I'm just going to call this decade.razor. Decade just meaning short for 10 years. And it doesn't become a page until you add the page tag at the top. So I want this page to be routed to /decade. Make that a little bit bigger. And so let's go ahead and hit Control F5 here. When I use Blazor, if you use Control F5, that'll start it without the debugger attached. And I think by default, we should get some hot reloading behavior. So let me zoom in on this a bit. And so I think this page should be available at /decade. Yep, sure enough, there it is. Now I have a practice of where I make lots and lots of commits. They can always be squashed if there's too many of them. And so you might find that a little bit strange, but I'm gonna, and I also use conventional commits. So you can see in the history here, let me look at it on GitHub in case that's easier to read. So I use a conventional commit style, which is something like this: FEAT, feat for a feature, and then in parentheses like an argument, the name of the feature. And so I'm going to call this feat decade, and just a simple commit message in present tense, add a /decade page. Control Enter to commit. that. All right. So what do we want on this page? So basically, we're going to want our inputs are going to be, and I have a reference here off to the side. Our inputs are going to be a growth rate, and we need to know, what's the money that's coming in, and so typically that would be our earnings. And so there's different, you could call it net income, but I'm kind of use a generic term here called earnings. And then what's the discount rate? We saw that on the first page there. And I think that's it. And then we're going to display, so inputs. These earnings, the input will be the first year earnings. So maybe we'll put that at the top. And then we're going to show it in a table. Now there's actually a closed form solution to this. We can just get the answer right away. But I don't just want to show just the answer to this. I want to show it as a table so that we can, so that someone can see year by year what the values are and how they get discounted back. And we'll add some other calculations to that. So, but maybe we'll show the closed form formula too. So we'll show the table of, and the table will have, so, the earnings, well, we want to have the year number and the earnings in that year, the present value of those, so with the formula applied. And I'm going to calculate it also as a percent. And then we're going to sum. This is not going to be in a table. The sum total of all present values. So that will add up all the present values to the future. That will give us the total value of this cash flow. And then something that's really useful for people when they think about valuing businesses is a multiple. And that will make more sense once you see it or if you've seen it before. And so I'm going to do an earnings multiple. So I think that's basically it. So this is what we're going to do, and I'm just going to put this in a comment here, Control K, Control C, so we know kind of what we're working with. All right, Blazor pages, they can just be kind of a superset of HTML, so we can just have HTML here. And so let's start with our inputs. Our inputs, let's have a look at our first page here because it's going to be really similar. So probably just going to copy this form here as a starting point. All right. So the first input is going to be so we want to just call this earnings. So actually, this is the first year earnings, so I'll call it initial earnings. And we'll come back. So this is as the value changes, there's a callback. I'm going to think about that in a minute. So we're going to call this first year earnings. All right. And what's our next input is the growth rate. We're not going to have periods, it's going to basically be hard coded. But we are going to have a growth rate. And we'll come back to that. This discount rate basically is going to be the same. So let's copy over the code members here. So in Blazor, you can have a separate section for code. This is C# code. And so I'm just going to copy over all this code and then I'll delete what I don't need. And then we'll do a refactor step later. So I want initial earnings, that's going to be our first year earnings. Let's initialize that to 1,000. Let's put discount rate up here. All right, so we have our discount rate. Come back to this present value. So I'm just going to copy paste the discount rate. I'm going to do a growth rate. It's going to be very similar. And I really like in VS Code, they have a feature where you can find replace but match the case. And so VS doesn't have that yet. So I'm going to do it here. Oh no, I do want to replace the first one, right? Okay. So similarly, we need some variables for that. We need we're going to put these as whole numbers. So let me call the growth rate 20, initialize the discount rate to 10. And we need a growth rate string. So we're just formatting that nicely as a percent. So you can see maybe over here, it's going to get formatted with a single decimal. Okay. Let me close this one so I don't get confused. Change. Let's copy this function. We'll circle back and refactor stuff. Right now, I think it's always okay to copy paste at the beginning. Just copy paste as much as you want. As long as you pinky swear, I'm going to come back and refactor. Okay, let's hit Control F5 on this. These purple squigglies, I think they mean that the application needs to restart for the hot reload, which is fine. And Those are not real errors. This is a real error. Okay. That's it. Control F5 again. And then we have a little activity over here. So this is getting hot reloaded. So we have a growth rate and a discount rate. All right, so the growth rate's not being used for anything yet, and discount rate. So, and I think we can, let's get rid of this for the moment. Okay. And what does this function do? Change future cash flow. That just calculates get present value, which is that one-time calculation. So we're going to change how that works. All right, so we've got our, let me hit save here, and this should reload on the right automatically. Does it? Should. Okay, let me check this box. Okay. So I think if I hit save, it'll get reloaded on the right. So I think these are our three inputs. The first year earnings, the growth rate, discount rate. These are the typical things that people would want to play with. And so the first thing I want to do is I really just want to see the table of what the earnings are going to look like as they grow. So I think we can cross that out. And so I am a big fan of copy pasting from the Bootstrap documentation anytime I want to start something new. So I have really nice idiomatic HTML and Bootstrap. So let's go find an example table. Okay, let's find one that looks kind of like we want. Do we want striped rows? Hover rows are kind of nice. They don't work on phone really, but they're kind of fun. So let's just do this hover row table, and nothing really to the syntax there. Okay, and so we're going to have a header row. So how does that start? All right, and we're going to loop. We're going to have a column. We're going to have a column per year, and so let's just make a quick constant here. Constant years equal to 10. We're just going to have constant, and I think I'm going to check this box that says yes, I always want you to rebuild and apply changes. When you can do that, that's fine. Try and get that hot reload going. And so let's do a for loop here at 4 and see if this will give us a snippet. Oops. Try that again. Oops. And time, let's just see. Let's see if that looks good. So, but I want humans to read this. So I'm going to say I plus 1. Okay. So that looks good. And we have, always the top left, there's kind of an empty cell there. So let's go tbody, tbody. And this first row, we're going to have a heading called earnings. Okay. And then again, we're going to have the same for loop. So at 4, tab, years, tab, enter, and this is going to be a TD, just a, no, TD should work. That's unfortunate. Oh, did I forget a TR in here? That's my fault. Let's see. Alt down. There we go. So this is going to be our earnings for that year. So let's just call a function here. And I'm going to pass in I. So let's go implement a function called earnings for year. And let me just put that. This function is kind of a life cycle function. I've got that at the top. So let me just put that right here. Private. Let's return a string, so we want to format it. And let's call it, what do we call it? Earnings for year. It takes in the year index, the I value. So year equals year index plus 1. It's okay to do things in base 1 for this. So we're assuming like the first year, we're not going to get the money until the end of the year. So really, we're just assuming we're kind of starting from 0. And at the end of this year, we'll get that first initial earnings, that first payout of $1,000 or whatever. And so I have the function for this, but let's just write it out for now so we can see the function. So we're just going to multiply the growth rate. So we're going to add 1 to the growth rate. So the growth rate's 20%. It's going to be 120%. Times your initial earnings, and then this growth rate is raised to the power of the number of years. So, and I think usually people expect that to come first. So this is so the earnings at that year is the initial earnings times the growth rate raised to the power of the number of years. So in the first year, it'll just be times 120%. In the second year, it'll be times 120% squared. And we want to format that, so let's return earnings.toString. And actually, I think I had a little function. No, I think we were just doing, I do not have a currency one here, so I'm just going to do toString. And I think it's C1 for currency. We'll try that. It's actually C0. We don't need any cents on this. Okay. Let's see if that will come back to life. Okay, so I did something terribly wrong. Okay, because my growth rate is a whole number, I need to divide it by 100. So let me divide that by 100. Okay, let's do a quick sanity check. This does not seem right. I expect year 1 to be 1,000, so I'm doing something wrong. The initial earnings is 1,000, and these are all the same, so I'm definitely doing something wrong here. Okay, I know what I'm doing wrong. What I'm doing wrong is a good thing to show in a Blazor demo. This is, in my opinion, the #1 gotcha in Blazor. Let me just test that theory real quick. So we're going to say, right in here, we're going to say var year index equals I, and we're going to pass in year index. And no. Okay, I thought it was capturing that loop variable. So let's just do @I here. Okay, you can see that. Oh, okay. I raised it to the power of years and not year. This should fix that. Okay. I thought I was getting a lambda capture of a loop variable, which if I was, I would just copy the variable. I'm not. Maybe we'll run into that later. All right. So at the end of the first year, we got $1,200. So that is off by 1. We really expect the first year to be 1,000. So let's just use year index instead of multiplying by 1. Okay. So the first year, at the end of the first year, we'll have $1,000. And in the following year, we will have $1,200. That should make sense. It's 20% more. If you were to take 20% of 1,200, it would be another, $240. So you get 1,440 the following year. So you can see that if we were to graph that, that's going to go up exponentially. So now let's see. We've got our year number and our earnings. So now let's figure out the present value of those earnings. So the present value is like, okay, if we were to take those future dollars and somehow through magic bring them back to today, but as they go through the time machine, they lose some value, and we apply the function to discount that cash flow. So let's see that. So the next row in our table is going to be a new row here. And actually, let's just commit so we have something kind of working. And actually, oh yeah, we have this change. This doesn't work yet, but this is awesome. This is what we're going for. This is magic. Simple thing, but now it's alive. And so this should seem really cool and exciting because now you can play with, well, what if we plan on growing our business 10% a year? What does that mean? In 10 years, we'll be making $2,400 a year. If we grow at 20%, how big of a difference is that? It's not a doubling. We see it's up to, 5,000 per year. I guess it's a doubling in the end, but the total is going to be more than a double. And so we can see how dramatically this changes things. So a lot of fun. Okay, so I think that's a great time to commit. If you'd like things to always be releasable, what we could do is like comment out this. So Control / and VS Code, Control K, Control C in Visual Studio. So this is kind of a working page, So we're gonna, again, this is under the decade feature, and add table for 10 years of earnings. All right, Control Enter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push that, and there is some continuous deployment. So what we'll do, it may take a minute, but in about a minute we'll go check and see if the page is live. All right, so the next row, what we're going to look at, I said, is the present value of those earnings. So the present value of those earnings, and again, my favorite for loop here, for I to years. All right, and so let's call another function again, and let's call it present earnings present value, and we'll pass in I. So earnings present value. All right, so yes, I'm going to edit that. And we're going to implement that right below this one. Okay, so the idea behind this function is we're going to apply the discounted cash flow math. And I'm just going to copy this and do pinky swear to come back and refactor. I'm going to calculate those same earnings that I have in the row above. And then I'm going to discount them back to today. So let's think about that for a second. And I have a function to help, but I'm going to try and just write the math from memory. There's a way to simplify all of this, but I'm just going to try and do it in the verbose way for a second. Let's call that present value. So we take the earnings, and actually I'm just going to make it look just like this for a second. And this time we raise it to a negative exponent. And we're not going to use the growth rate, we're going to use the discount rate. But I'm going to do it this way. I might be off by one right here, but we'll see this. I'm doing this just so you can see how symmetrical these are. And for the mathematicians, you'll see that those functions could easily collapse into your exponents get added. And then I'm just going to return, again, that same format, C0 for currency with 0 decimals. Does that look right? Okay, so we've got that present value. Yeah, so I think we're off by 1. So what we're saying is in a year from now, what's that $1,000 worth today? It's not worth $1,000 because we don't have it yet. We have it in 1 year. And so I'm going to say I'm going to subtract 1 from this. So, or add 1. Well, it's going to end up being, let's do it like this. So it's a little bit more intuitive. So we need to add 1 to the year index, which ends up being subtracted. Okay. So our discount rate is 10%. So let's think about this. You know, in our heads, we can just think, well, what's 10% of $1,900? So it should be about 900 bucks. I mean, 100 bucks. Sorry, 10% of 1,000 is about 100 bucks. We should be about 100 bucks less than 1,000. It's not exactly, the math I just did in my head is not exactly right. What I did was multiply my value times 90% or subtracted 10% of my value. That's not exactly the way that the way compounded growth and compounded discounting works. It actually works via multiplication. And so that means that you're not multiplying to get your future value, you're not multiplying by 90% to discount. You're actually dividing by 110%. And that's slightly different. And the reason it works that way is so it cancels out nicely with the growth. So growth and discounting, they're the same thing. So you have it right here in front of you, they're the same function, the same equation. And so that's why it's not exactly $100. But, you know, if it helps in your head, it can be close to that. So if this is working, we should be able to slide this slider, yes, and see. Now this is really amazing how significant this discount rate is. And I'll pause here because interest rates are in the news right now. It's a very big deal, the Fed talking about raising interest rates. And when the Fed raises interest rates, it impacts this discount rate that we apply to future earnings. And so they're talking about, you know, somewhere around 3%, raising that, let's say, to around 3.7%. So you can see, let's look at this value out here, 3,500 versus, you know, 3,800 or so. And so, in today's dollars, it's like about a 10% difference. So these discount rates are a very big deal. If they get very big, it really squashes your future value. And if this discount rate goes higher than your growth rate, then effectively you see these values are going down over time. If the discount rate stays below your growth rate, then your values are going up over time. So already we have a really helpful tool for understanding discounted cash flows. Of course, we can put in other values here. So if you have a business that makes $500,000, let's have this get updated too, shall we? What do we need to do with this? So we want our first year earnings. When that changes, we want to update our table. How can we force that to happen? Change future cash flow. Probably going to end up renaming this and not using all this stuff down here. So let's just call this function, I think it's called should render. State has changed. So I believe there is a function called state has changed that will just tell it, hey, you need to go recalculate things and update the view, I think. Oh. Why is my table not? Okay, so I'm setting initial earnings. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of this and just bind it, see if that just works. Bind. Okay, it's working if I hit enter. And that's why I had that. So okay. So I just need to set this. Okay. Okay. So I have the other variable in here that I'm not using right now. So one of the perils of copy paste. And we're not really using this. So let's get rid of this. Am I using this? Not really. Oh, I'm using that two double. Okay, this works, this works, this works. All right. I'm not using this, right? Present value string. We're not using periods. We're not using future cash flow. Where's my error? Okay. I'll submit, let's call this, we're going to rename this future cash flow, and we're going to say this is called change initial earnings. Let's try that again. F2, change initial earnings. Did that work? Nope. Okay. I think it. Does that take an event? Okay. So what this does is just lets things calculate if you hit enter. Maybe I don't need it. Let's see. Okay. All right. So let's see. Yes. Okay. I need to put something in that so it doesn't reload the page. Okay. I don't think we need to worry about the hitting enter thing. So now we can see live updates. Very cool. Okay. So that's fine. All right, so we've got our table, shows our present value. And let's go ahead and check this in. Oh, and that reminds me we were going to check that other build. So discounted.cash is the live site, and then we're going to navigate to the /decade page. Let's see if it's up there. Okay, so that's the page that we built earlier, and it's live and it's working. Anybody can go visit it. We didn't have that up yet, but our growth rate's there. Cool. All right, so let's check this in, feet, decade. And we added a, let's check the diff here. We added our present values. Add row of earnings, present values. And let's think about that for a second. I want it to be understandable to beginners. So I'm going to put present value of earnings. Is that going to look too verbose? So let's see if we have to, is that going to wrap nicely? Sort of. So I might have to revisit this. You know, one of the goals of the page is for it to be useful to beginners. People, this is an educational tool. So I do want to have the verbosity there. So I'm going to leave it say present value of earnings, but maybe we can find a way to make that more succinct or something. And we're push that. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. This has been a longer session than I intended, but pretty cool that we have these results. And then I will start another video to do these next steps where we finally show the sum total of all these values and some other things. Thanks for watching.